Hello, I'm Rita Zahara. You may have seen me reading the news on television. I was a newscaster with ESPN Star Sports and was also a reporter and newscaster with Channel News Asia. But more recently, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the co-founder and CEO of AMGD Global. It's a food tech company that curates, sources, prepares, and delivers delicious, healthy meals to your doorstep. Our goal is healthier people in a healthier world. And by producing as close to nature as possible, produced in a zero food waste environment, we aim to impact, influence, and improve the quality of lives one healthy meal in each day. We are partnering with Thermomix to look into a more holistic approach to healthier eating for our customers. More updates on that later. I am your guest host for today's tutorial. I am sharing with you a recipe that I created. It's healthy zero sugar pineapple tarts. I'm going to introduce to you the ingredients we're going to use for today's recipe. So there'll be a bit of multitasking that's going on here. I'll be producing the condensed milk from scratch. Condensed milk is a substitute that I'll be using to avoid using sugar. So the ingredients that we'll be using typically uses castor sugar, but castor sugar is not very good for your health. So we will use more on monk fruit or stevia. So I'm very blessed and honored to have been sponsored by monk fruit, and monk fruit is fructose. It's also diabetic friendly, so it's much easier to digest for your body. It's much better for you to also produce in your bakes. This will be the machine that I'll be using for the condensed milk, and at the same time I will be making the jam using this machine. Okay, and one of the key ingredients I use in the jam is the pandan leaves. This is a secret ingredient actually given by my mother. Technically, she says it also adds a fragrance, and pandan leaves is also very good for you. And there are also some spices that I include, which is the cinnamon stick, and then the star anise and the cloves. And here, most of the ingredients again are also natural. We use sea salt, and we don't use the normal sea salt, the normal salt. And then at the same time, natural lime juice or lemon juice. And again, I will use monk fruit or stevia instead of castor sugar. I would recommend that you will start with the pineapple jam first, because you need to store it overnight, and then you only need to start making your condensed milk and your pastry the next day. Okay, so let's begin. So baking is a science. If you understand every ingredient and what it does when you put them together, you can technically create your own recipes. So I took on the challenge with Thermomix on how to create my own recipes. Originally, I do have a pineapple tart recipe created in my first cookbook. This is the Malay Heritage Cooking. It's a book in memory of my mother and grandmother, and this is my second cookbook. In this first cookbook, I did share with our readers and our audience on how to create pineapple tarts. So there is a recipe, or an ingredient rather, in this book that uses ghee. So that was the old me that have not understood or learned so much about nutrition and nutrition-based health foods. So when I look at my original recipe here, there is ghee. There's still condensed milk as well, and this is the jam. So I was just thinking, how do I tweak this recipe with Thermomix and make a healthier zero sugar pineapple tarts? But being a creator and someone who builds anything, I took on that challenge and tweaked the recipe accordingly. So this is what I'm going to share with you today. Right? The very first one that I did was to ensure that I'm able to create our very own condensed milk without the store-bought sweetened condensed milk. And very blessed, inside Thermomix, there's already a condensed milk recipe. So it makes it even easier for me. I just have to look at the original recipe in Thermomix and then tweak it. And then from there, I know what to swap. So what I did was, this particular recipe in Thermomix, it uses sugar, if I believe. So I just swap it around by using monk fruit. So we shall start now. So next, After the 40 grams of unsalted butter is 125 grams of water. And then now is just the cover and let it do its work. And this is the part I fell in love with the Thermomix. Because usually I have to stir myself, then I have to do one side. Now it does the work for me. Generally, if you are cooking and baking at the same time, you kind of only get to do one thing at a time. But you save a lot of time when the Thermomix is able to do things for you and you are able to wash up or prepare or cut your ingredients for the next thing. So I'm going to continue with the condensed milk. I think it's ready. So now is to put in the sugar. According to the original recipe in Thermomix is 180 grams of raw cane sugar, but I'm replacing it with monk fruit. Monk fruit, as I mentioned before, it is zero sugar. It comes from fruit. So it's very good for those with diabetes or those who want to control your sugar levels in your body. Okay, so just press next. And then 110 grams of milk powder. And a pinch of salt. And that's how easy it is to make your very own condensed milk. Okay. There you go. Let do its magic. Okay, I'm going to start now with the jam. So one thing good about creating your own recipes is you are able to create the recipe, let's say with your laptop, and then it will be saved into your account and it just syncs automatically with Thermomix. So that's exactly what I did. I created the recipe using my laptop and then create the first batch. And then if there's any tweaking that's needed along the way, I did it again on my laptop and then it just sync the moment the next time I log into my account using the Thermomix. Okay, so this is my very own created recipe. You can do it with your very other recipes as well. Okay, let's start with this. Right. So you will reach up about this kind of height. Okay. So when it's all filled to the brim, it's about 1,500 grams of pineapple chunks, and then just it'll just be 5 seconds, and then strip it down. Do it 3 times. You can do it like 3, 4, 5 times. It's up to you, depending on how smooth you want your pineapple jam to be. So I tried it with 3. So if you want to make it even finer, you can do it up to 5 times. So it's much finer now. It smells so lovely. I always love things as close to nature as possible. And then you create them and you serve to your customers rather than process. Okay. Okay, it's smooth enough. So tempting to make it into a cold pressed juice. But we are making jam today for pineapple tart, so it's different. Then I will need this. At the same time, you would have noticed that the condensed milk is already ready. So let me show you how magically it has transformed. It looks like that, right? So I'm going to transfer this also to a dish while also taking out the jam. I would say it's not jam yet, it's still at the pulp stage. So we are trying to remove excess water. So let it do its work. Give me a moment. So I am going to transfer the condensed milk, the healthy one that we made with monk fruit, into a bowl. You won't be needing so much of the condensed milk for my recipe. So you can actually use it, store it in a bottle and keep it for later or use it for another time. So we are about done here. So I'll just continue to sieve out by encouraging the pulp a little bit so that more of the water will just be drained out. And then we'll just bring it back to the Thermomix. Okay, I'm going to swap this around because I'm just going to scoop it into the Thermomix. So I have two of my sponsors with me today. One is Kitchenery. All the tools that I'm using today is with Kitchenery. Of course, this lovely Thermomix and monk fruit, by a good friend of ours that's sponsoring most of our bakes, because sugar helps us with the browning and the baconing, but monk fruit, like I said, it comes from fruit, and stevia comes from plant. So it's up to you whether you would like to use stevia or monk fruit in replacement of the normal caster sugar. Okay, so now back into the Thermomix. They have so many different parts of the Thermomix that's very helpful for any person, any new user, or even a veteran user of the Thermomix will find it very helpful. I'll just put this behind again. Okay, I'm ready for the next step. Okay, sorry. At this point, I will put in a few ingredients that originally in my book does not have, but they have some properties that I think would be beneficial for you. It's an option. Sometimes some people, if you understand the benefits of cinnamon, cloves and star anise, you may want to put them in your jam. It not only adds flavor, but it's also very good for your immunity. It's anti-inflammatory. It also helps with your digestion. So it's just good to put anything that's beneficial for your body into something that you create. So that's what I've done here as well. So you can see that I put in some spices and 2 knots of pandan. Okay, good to go. This will take about 45 minutes. So while we're waiting for the jam to be ready, we'll start with the pastry. There is one thing that's interesting about being able to create your own recipe, because you can control the calories that you want to consume. So I've gotten EMGD's nutritionist to help us calculate the macros and the nutritional information of our recipe, and it comes down to only 23 calories per tart. Versus what's store-bought, what's in the market is about 95 calories. So if you are looking to consume less calories and a bit guilt-free during Chinese New Year, it's perfect for you to create these recipes, because I will also explain how we are able to achieve that. There are 3 types of sugar: natural, and then added, as well as free. So a lot of people think, oh, how do you create a zero-free sugar recipe? Because there's also sugar in the pineapples. So sugar in pineapples or in fruits, they are actually fructose. So fructose are natural. So if you are able to create recipes with natural fructose, then there's no sugar added. Okay, so that's the main difference. Sugar added will be things like caster sugar, brown sugar. They are needed for thickening as well as texturizing, and it creates the oomph in your food, but they are added on. So when you add on, then that's when your calories for that particular recipe will also go up, because it's added, right? So if you want to reduce, then you take as close to nature as possible, which is already presented in fruits and then given to you either plant-based, which is stevia, or you can also have it with monk fruit, which is based from fruits. Okay, then the last type of sugar would be those that are, there's such a thing as sugar-free. So what does it mean by sugar-free? So sugar-free is also extracted from fruits and then usually found in juice concentrates, you know, those juices that you get in a supermarket, but it's already extracted from the fruit and free for you to use. So that's why it's sugar-free lah. Okay, so I hope that some information about calories and understanding what you are eating will be very beneficial for you, especially if you want to control your glucose levels in your body to reduce the risk of diabetes, high blood pressure, and other critical illnesses. Okay, so now let's start with the pastry. So we'll start with the 450 grams of the flour. So this one you can use the all-purpose flour. The pastry that I am using in our tutorial today is very buttery. It's supposed to melt in your mouth. But if you prefer it to be a little bit harder and firmer, then of course you can add a little bit more flour. Okay, but I prefer those that melt in your mouth and then it's moorish. You won't stop at one. You technically will eat at least 3 at one go. And because it's so light, it's about 20 to 25 calories, so you know it's very good for your waistline. Alright, so we have the plain flour and we also will add in the baking powder. It's already measured out, it's 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. And then, just to be sure everything's good. And then next is to add the butter. And cut into cubes in advance, and it's cold, so it's directly straight from the fridge. Cover it. For 20 seconds. Okay. So it's ready now. I've kept the recipe really light without the monk fruit sugar. But if you have tasted it and you felt that you needed a little bit more punch and more flavor, then you can add 20 grams of monk fruit at this stage where you also added the butter. Okay, so butter with the 20 grams of monk fruit as optional, and then you close the lid and then let it do its work. But for me, what I've done just now was just the butter without the monk fruit because as an option. Alright, now is to add in the condensed milk, which is 120 grams. And then 1 egg. Together with the sea salt as well as the vanilla essence. Okay, a little bit of help here. All good and clean. And there we go. For only 20 seconds. Now the pastry is also done. Okay, so the pastry is done so nicely here. You see, only a Thermomix can do something like that. Okay, I'm just going to take my baking sheet. Makes it so much easier. This is all done. Okay. I'll start with a smaller quantity. It helps if you have one of these plastic sheets so that your dough will turn out really, really smooth. Less steps is better. So one good thing about this open face recipe is that it's not too soft and flaky that sometimes they just fall apart when you are making with the closed face ones because it's very sturdy and firm. But when you actually after baking it, it's very It has this melt in your mouth capabilities because I think it's attributed to the condensed milk. So if you see any of those Malay pineapple tarts recipes, caster sugar is something that they commonly use. It's only having the condensed milk is something that my mother would have recommended. But what I've done is, the beauty with second, third generation bakers or cooks, right, is to constantly improve on our heritage and tradition. So what we have done here is to create our very own homemade condensed milk. Okay, this is good. That consistency. First is how to actually create the mold so it gets the shape. Yeah. So in the market, there will be this type of molds to create the open face ones. One side, it has this lovely design. The other side is flat. So what we're going to do today is, because it's home style, homemade, then you give yourself more work. Then you have to use this flat surface. But if you are producing it in bulk and then you're doing it for business, home businesses, then this one will do just as well. Okay, I will do both so that you can have a look. For those who are very ambitious, who want to try to go and learn to clip yourself, sure, I will show you the technique in a while. So just press it on and then put it on your baking sheet. And one technique that my mother would have taught as well is to bring the mold as close to each other when you press it on the pastry, so that you max out the number of pieces that you get for every single one that you actually laid on, rather than there be some people that put all over the place, so it's a little bit messy. Another thing is, if any instances where the dough is a little bit too thin, and I purposely give you one example here, you get a hole in the center. What are you going to do with it? So what you need to do is just to have a little bit of dough and paste it here, and magically the hole will be patched up. So you can actually patch your pastry, and then it will turn out just the same. So you don't have to put it back and then waste it. You see, it's magically arranged again, like just as good as the rest. This is something that my mother used to give for our neighbors and relatives during Hari Raya. So I believe in Chinese, right? Pineapple tarts have this significance of sharing prosperity when you give it to your loved ones, your relatives and friends to eat and share. So for the Malays, it's also the same. It still remains one of our main signatures whenever we have guests over. So I'm going to start showing examples, the difference between having the already patterned side without any clip needed. Okay, so no one is going to judge you. It's still a labor of love. There you go. Okay. Ta-da! So I'll just make a few to see that they will just turn out just as lovely if you are not able to master the art of clipping as yet. So we have one of our nutritionist intern with EMGD here, Beatrice, who will help me with filling up the tray while I teach you on how to do the traditional ways of pinching. Generally, this particular clipper is available at most bakeries. So there are some, there are newer ones. Technically, they look like this. They are silver, but because this is passed down for so many generations, from my grandmother to me, and to my grandmother, to my mother, to me, so it's been around for a very long time. So can you imagine how precious this particular one is? Okay, what you need to do is to slant it by 45 degrees at your fingertips, maybe all three, and with your thumb, hold it in the center, and then you just pinch it down. So that's why pineapple tarts is a labor of love, because can you imagine the one that we did here is done and the pattern is prepared within 2 seconds, whereas this one, depending on how experienced you are, you'll probably take more than a few seconds to finish just one tart. Side by side, one that is naturally by the hand, and the other one is by the mold. Okay, so of course we will clean this up and make it even look prettier once we have the jam ready. I still need to do it for another 10 minutes. I'll give it a check. So I'm just going to check on it. Okay, I'm just going to check on the jam. It smells so good. I think the spices do help. Of course, it's an option for you, but like I said, it helps with your digestion, with your immunity, as well as it has anti-inflammatory properties. So anything that's good for health, why not? Right? So it's not just adding flavor to the taste. They also have a certain function when you add into your recipe. Okay, I'm just going to do it for another 10 minutes. So don't beat yourself up if you cannot create the pinch. The trick is to constantly slant it at 45 degrees, right? And then when you slant it at 45 degrees, when you're pinching as well, you are not just pinching from the top, you are pinching it at a slant. So when you pinch it at a slant, you have this natural look. So I give you an example of how not to do it. So some people will just do it like that. Right? So when you do it like that, it's not natural. It's okay, acceptable, but if you want it to look very traditional, then the trick is, again, 45 degrees, not from the top, but 45 degrees also with the sides. So you take a bit of the top as well as the side. So it always looks like it's on a curve versus just straight up. So now, this jam, while it's being made, right, the jam that you have kept it overnight, what you can do is to make them into round balls and weigh for about 8 grams each. Okay, one of another trick of mine, taught by my mother, is to not have it just the balls and then straight up to your mold or your cookie, right? You need to flatten it slightly. Okay, do not flatten it while you are putting it on the pastry, because you just spread out the pastry. You flatten it before putting it. Okay, here goes. Okay, maybe a bit too big. And that's how it looks like. So the weight of the balls of the jam is about 8 grams, and then if you use these molds that you can get easily from the bakery, they make up to about 9 to 10 grams. This particular jam is ready, so I just need to remove the spices and the pandan leaves. Okay. When the paste comes out from the bottom, like this, it's already ready. Then you just need to remove the pandan leaves that I put in, as well as the spices. So some of you may ask, what kind of pineapples do you need to choose? I mentioned earlier that it's about 3 to 4 very ripe pineapples. How do you know it's very ripe? If you were to cut the pineapple, or you were to look on the outside, it is a deeper yellow versus a very, very light yellow. Okay, so once you have a very ripe pineapple, then you get more pulp, and then you add less sugar as well. So right now you can see that I'm adding a little bit of monk fruit into the mixture, but you can also reduce it if you want, but then to me, because monk fruit is no sugar, is already good enough. Okay, that's the last step for this. Yay! Measuring. So you'll continue cooking for another 5 minutes and we are done with this. I will teach you now on how to actually roll out the pineapple jam. But of course, this one has to sit in overnight before you actually roll them out, okay? So you weigh out, because I'm a pro, I kind of know that it's going to be already 7 to 8 grams each, okay? But you can always use Thermomix to actually get the precise weight if you like, but I think some of you are also experts, probably more expert than me. You kind of know that this is the right consistency that you want for your pineapple balls. So it's good. What I'm going to do too is to transfer to a smaller baking tray. There are probably a few more questions that you probably want to ask me. Some people say, can you use honey instead of sugar? In this particular recipe, I would not recommend honey as well. What we have done is already converted it with monk fruit as well as the home-style, homemade, zero sugar condensed milk. So that does this magic already for this recipe, okay? But if you want to swap and substitute honey in most of your other cooking and your bakes, you can. But bearing in mind that honey is actually sweeter than normal sugar or added sugar, so you have to ensure that you measure out the consistency. So if you were to use sugar in your cooking, your baking, you need it to be for the browning and the texturing. I would heavily recommend that you take monk fruit, which is coming from fruits and is zero sugar, or you can still also substitute with stevia, which comes from plants. Okay, and let's say if you think that it will affect the texture and the taste of your whatever that you produce, I suggest that why don't you give it a try, because it creates a healthier, the people around you healthier, and then that's one step closer to creating a healthier world as well. Okay. So at AMGD, we are very determined. Our goal is to create healthier people in a healthier world. Our recipes are meant to be healthier. So if, let's say, we were to create anything that's based from heritage and tradition, my role as well as the team of nutritionists that we have in-house, we will ensure that we are able to create and tweak those recipes to remain as delicious as possible, but yet, how do you feel after it? So I will implore you to try these particular recipes that we have created so that you can also feel the difference when you create a pineapple tart laden with sugar versus a zero-free pineapple tart. In the last step, I'm just going to remove the cup here and then for 5 minutes, and it should be ready. And then this helps with the browning as well so that the steam will come off. Okay? Finish off the final tray. Okay, this should be ready. Yeah, now it's perfect. Okay, so it looks like this. And then another question that's probably in your heads, in your mind, you probably ask, do we need to put egg wash on these pineapple tarts? I would say no. Not for the Malay version recipes. Usually the egg wash is suitable for the closed face ones, because it has that nice gloss on the pineapple tart. But for the open face Malay version, you don't need to. Okay. Okay. What I'll do is I'll just put it together like that, cling wrap. This should, with 1,500 grams of fresh pineapple chunks, will produce about 300 grams of jam. And we are done. This one can sit here and wash up after. Okay, so this goes into the oven, and this is your jam for the next day. Thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you enjoyed my recipe as much as I did in creating it, and I hope to see more of your masterpieces that you share with your family and friends.